Another concept which is important for you to know about is something called source data automation. So when we're talking about input and how do we get things into the computer, this is a really important concept for you to know about source data automation. And what is source data automation? What does that mean? What does it mean? What does it mean? Well, one of the best ways you can know about it is just to kind of think of what's going on at the grocery store. All right, so here's a nice picture of somebody at the grocery store, and they are scanning their items. Maybe it's a self-checkout aisle, kind of looks like that. And think about how this process used to work back in the day. Because when I was a kid, I actually lived across the street from a guy who was a professional cashier, checkout clerk at Safeway grocery store on the corner of Clovis and Shaw Avenue. And he was just really good at, like, let me see, what's the sticker on the can, and then type it in, and what's the sticker? Oh, you're having hot dogs tonight, are you? Haha. And type in the prices. He would type in the prices for each thing you were going to buy. He would type them in by hand, right? Because there was no source data automation. And that was problematic for a variety of reasons. One, it was slow. Two, if you're his friend, he could type in the wrong price and charge you a little bit less. Three, if since he was human, he's going to make errors, right? And there'll be times where he types in the wrong price, no matter how good he is. And then four, it was just like a big pain in the ass to have to like change prices on something, because you'd have to go out into the supermarket aisles and you would be like, you'd have the little sticker gun with the little price sticker on it, and you have to pick up each can of beans if you want to change prices on the beans, and you'd be like, kashunk, kashunk, on each can of beans. And like, it's just very laborious and time consuming, and not happening fast, because for some reason we as humans like to think that if we do things faster, it's better. And I don't know if that's necessarily the case. But anyhow, this idea of source data automation took the human out of the process of keying in the price. We automated the capturing of the data, right? So where's the data coming from? What's its source? We wanted to know the price. And instead of having a human type it in, you just scan the barcode and the price goes in. So it was automated. And there's less human error there, right? There's less human error. Because as soon as you scan it, the computer recognizes what product it is, and then it just charges you for that price. So that's a really good example of source data automation. And at the end of this video, we're going to see how we might improve this process even more, right? You might look at this process right now and you might think, hey, that's a really great improvement. That's as good as it can get. But it can actually get better. So I have a question for you to ponder along the lines of, the cornerstone of technology is innovation, right? How can you innovate right here in this little process right here, this system, the system by which we purchase products today and ring up their prices? How could this be improved even further? I think I might have already mentioned it in the course, but if you want to, you could pause this video and you could think about that for a second. How can we make this process happen even quicker and have it have complete accuracy so that you get charged the right price for every item that you have in your shopping cart? So that's a really good question, right? How can we make this process even more efficient and 100% accurate? So that's something to contemplate and ponder, and I'll give you the solution to that here at the end of this video. So we're looking at source data automation, and here's a definition from UCSC. Wow, that's a really good source in and of itself, University of California, Southern California. But here is how they define source data automation, and it's a fantastic definition. The use of automated methods of data entry that attempt to reduce or eliminate many of the activities, people, and data media required by traditional data entry methods, right? And so we want to reduce or eliminate activities and people, right? We're going to put people out of a job. That's one of our tasks as computer technicians or people who go in and make things happen quicker. We want to have the computers automate a lot of the stuff that humans used to do, and it'll save money for the businesses, which in turn those reduced costs can be passed on to the consumer, but it does put some people out of a job. They just have to find other jobs. So we want to automate the capturing of data, right? And so another good example of this is like with surveys. So in the past, maybe, somebody would take a survey and they would fill it out on paper and then hand the survey in. And then somebody, once those surveys were handed in, somebody else would have to look at the survey and type that data into a computer for analysis. Well, that's like a cumbersome process. There's 2 steps in that process, and really we could get it down to 1 step. And the 2 steps, right, is 1, the person fills it out on paper, and then 2, another person takes that paper and enters the data. Well, there's a chance for an error there because the person entering the data is, again, human, and they can make mistakes when entering the data. And so with source data automation, it'd be much better to have somebody just take the survey themselves instead of taking it on paper, to take it on a computer, and the data goes straight into the computer. So we eliminate that second step where somebody else is entering the data for the person who took the survey. And we just have the person taking the survey take it themselves on a computer, and the data goes straight into the computer. And so we've eliminated one of the steps. And so SurveyMonkey is a website that some people use to automate surveys and have people take surveys on computers. And it's just kind of good to know about when you get into the business world. Of course, you could always use inside Google Drive, create form, and that's going to create a form to gather data. And I don't know if we showed that yet in these videos. I know it's one of our assignments, but I will make sure that we learn how to use Google Form. So I will make sure that that's into our coursework at some point if it hasn't already been here. So SurveyMonkey is just kind of cool to know about. But the main thing you're going for here is you're learning about this concept of source data automation, where we're trying to get the capturing of data to go straight into the computer with as few of people touching it as possible, right? Where ideally it's pretty automated and it reduces the chance for human error. So that's the idea behind it. So a little story for you. When I was in grad school, I used to work at this place called the Real Estate Land Use Institute, and we would analyze all the MLS data, which is multiple listing services data, for real estate transactions in the greater Fresno County metropolitan area. And I know it's a lot of like blah, 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 bullcrap words. But what would happen is, you know, here is this data that we got that a whole bunch of different realtors from all over our community had entered into a database. And they'd entered it directly on an online form, and it went straight into the database. But the problem with that was that sometimes they would go to a field, you know, for entering the city, and they would type in Fresno, which would be correct. But sometimes they would type in FR, right? Or sometimes they would type in Furson or whatever, Fresno, because they would have typos. So if we then went and said, oh, give us all the records for Fresno, right, we would not get the records for FR, which some people would sometimes enter, or we would not get the records for when there were spellings, misspellings, right? So those records would be left out of our data, and then our data would not be accurate. It would not reflect accurate results. So if we said, hey, there's 1,200 cells in Fresno in the last year, and we left out all of the Fresnos and FRs, right, because people had entered that data in a funny way, then our data would not have integrity. Our data would not have integrity because we are saying there's 1,200 sales, but actually there are more. And so one of the really important things when you're trying to automate the capture of data is to make sure you're validating that data. And this is a big deal in web forms and things like that. You want to make sure that, like, for instance, when we were asking people for the city, it would be best just to have a drop-down list where they chose either Fresno or Clovis or Madera, right, or Sanger, because with a drop-down list, they're not typing in and thus maybe creating a misspelling. They're just choosing one of the options. And so that would be an example of data validation. Or if we were asking for a birth date and somebody entered their last name, we would say, no, don't enter text. You can only enter numbers. Or better yet, we'd have a calendar from which they could choose their birth date. And so we would know that they are actually choosing a date, you know. And that's an example of data validation to ensure that our data has integrity. So all of this is part of source data automation and trying to get input into the computer in a way where the data has integrity and is reliable and valid. And so SurveyMonkey, cool to know about. Google Forms, of course, under Google Drive, create form, awesome to know about. And I just saw this website. I don't know if it's any good, Swagbucks, but it actually came up when I was searching for surveys, SurveyMonkey, and then Swagbucks right there. And we've awarded over $45 million. They'll pay you to take surveys. And they say a $5 minimum payout, but then they say they're paying $1.50 for this gamer study. So I don't know what their issue is. But kind of an interesting website. Maybe if you want to make a few coins, see if it's worth your time, you might check it out. I've never played with it. All right, so the last thing I wanted to leave you with was how can we automate this process even more? And there's some technology out there called RFID, radio frequency ID. And we're going to look at it in a moment here with our input devices, and I'll tell you more about it. But basically, radio frequency ID is a little chip that you could put into the packaging, right? So there's the little chip inside the packaging. And what that would allow is that you could then walk through some sort of a scanner, and it would know which products you had anywhere on your body, and it would automatically be able to ring up all those products instantaneously. So you could just push your grocery cart through a little scanner like this, and everything in your cart would automatically ring up. You swipe your credit card and you'd be on your way. And so that would eliminate all of these checkout lines, right? Because just imagine like if everybody in America had to wait 10 minutes in a checkout line, once a year even, 10 minutes times how many people are in America? How many people are in America? 313, so 314 million, 314, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 times 10 minutes, right? And then let's divide all that by 60 minutes. So that's hours. And let's divide all that hours. And there's 24 hours in a day. And then there's 365 days in a year. And so we would say 5,974 years. 5,974 years. And, 5,974 years are 59 human lives in time. 59 human lives in time if people live to be 100 years. Let's divide that by 80. Average lifespan, 80. 70, so what's the average lifespan? Average American lifespan. Life expectancy. Not a quick answer. Life expectancy for, I'm looking for US, well, 78.7 years. 78.7 years. It's pretty close. 78.7. So we are throwing away 75 lives, right, every year. If people spend 10 minutes on average in checkout lines, that has cost us the same equivalent time of 75, almost 76 lives, entire lives, that are spent just in collective time of people waiting in supermarket checkout lines each year. If it's only 10 minutes all year, and we know we probably spend more time than that in lines. So having something like a RFID to expedite the process of checkout could save people a lot of time, and then we could work more. We'll have more time for work. So isn't that a good thing? I think it is.